going on with sex differences. Okay, so again, a huge one. The front page news is that men don't bond through casual sex. And by the way, casual sex is an oxymoron because there's nothing casual about sex. So women that are listening, know that you've got a superpower. The superpower is called chastity until marriage. And the guy, the bar, if the bar is low, as far as obtaining sex, the guy will slither over it, thankfully. If it's high, he will find a way to get over it. And high is the where you want it to be, the conditions you set, which is historically what's happened. And even other species, the females in other species demand certain things, things happen before sex occurs. All right. Why is it so important? What drives males to go through all that to get sex? Well, men are much more easily sexually stimulated than women are. There are 3 areas of the male's brain that are twice as big and they're the sexual pursuit areas. One's called the medial preoptic area. And as it implies, it's located right behind where the optic chiasm comes into the brain, right there in the hypothalamus. And it's, as I said, twice as big and packed with twice as many neurons. So, and very sensitive to sight. That's why women may find themselves, with a guy on a date and he's kind of scoping the room. Well, it isn't so much you lady that is the problem. He's kind of got this built-in thing going on there with that. And also, that area is very sensitive to testosterone levels, and men on average have 20 times more testosterone. Another area of the hypothalamus, which is really the seat of sexuality in the human brain, it's called the INAH3. I'm not going to take time to go into that, but it's another sexually important area, and is twice as big and packed with twice as many neurons, and also sensitive to testosterone stimulation. The third area that I want to mention is the amygdala, and the amygdala is also twice as big in the males and packed with twice as many neurons, and is sensitive to sexual cues in males, and testosterone. The amygdala is the brain's survival, command, and control center. And so when it makes a statement and gives a signal, it's pretty hard for the male brain in this case to ignore it. Interestingly, women's amygdalas are very sensitive to food cues. And again, that may go back to our ancestors, the way it was for our ancestors. One other thing, it's not even so much of a huge, difference in the 20 times more testosterone that men have. It's also women have 13 times more sex hormone binding globulin. So we're really getting the chemistry here. SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, and what it does is it deactivates testosterone and estrogen. So you really have a really mismatch in the male brain versus the female brain as far as sex drive goes. In most cases, there's a few exceptions, but it's really, really massively unequal. And I think the reason for that is
how does that affect their interactions? That what? Yeah, I guess I think you're about to answer it. What is the reason for that? Because that doesn't seem like a good thing.
Well, again, in the past, and this goes back our 2 million years, men have not always, but oftentimes in the past, even up to 1960, have not had a choice on sex except for meeting what the female demand was for it. So it's been a strong drive for them, and they've reached their highest level of testosterone at age 17. And it stays high throughout their 20s and only starts going down, like about 1% a year after age 30. To me, Colleen, again, in God's design, that is to drive young men towards being willing to commit to this young woman who's, demanding a certain romantic and chivalrous behavior in the past out of him, and he's going to commit to her, at some point. You compare that to our hookup culture, and you don't have that. You don't have the women laying down the law, which has been their, historical, and I think given to them by God as a sexual nature role. And so with feminism, feminism ironically has really been destructive to women. I believe, and again, especially the last 10 to 15 years. So that would be the purpose of it, would be to drive men who wouldn't necessarily maybe want to commit, given other choices, to commit, basically, and to play by the rules in order to be around this woman, the chaste rules that we talked about, and for that vasopressin process and then oxytocin bonding process to be able to take place. So that's what I think the purpose of it is.
Okay, I
It's
have a
just
question based off of that.
it's gone haywire though with the idea that men and women should act just the same. That women should the phrase they use is that women should F like men,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't, you're being repressed and all of that. So that's really, really been a bad, ungodly,
Yeah.
pathway. And that's one of the main things that needs to be fixed in order to get us back to where we need to be. Do you have another question?
I do.
Okay, go for it.
So if women are supposed to set this high bar and men need to like have that high bar to be able to commit to women, what does that mean for women who have a high bar in a society where other women are willing to sleep around? Like, will men actually rise to that occasion, or are those men just going to settle for the women that are easy to get? I know you were saying that they don't like when it's easy, but it seems like you have an imbalance of if some women are setting the bar really high and some women are willing to sleep around and men need to have a high bar to be able to commit. What does that look like in today's modern age where you have such different situations going on?
Excellent. It's a tough situation for women, especially chaste women, really strongly believing Christian, especially Catholic women, traditional Catholic women. It's really tough. But what it comes down to is the men that the women that the men are sleeping around with can pretty much count on not getting somebody to commit to them as their life goes along. The woman that won't play the game and is doing things that I think the way God intended them to be done may have to wait a while because of this situation. But eventually, I think she's going to be the one. She has the scarce resources. She's the rare one that hasn't been with a bunch of other guys, and the guy doesn't have to worry about it. And she's kind of proof of concept that she can be loyal, and that her sexual integrity is important to her, and she's not just going to give it to any guy. So it's kind of a quality versus quantity, concept. The quantity the guy will take as far as every day, for a week or two or whatever, and then he's on to somebody else. The chaste woman is the one that's going to get his attention as far as a marriage partner, that type of thing. That's literally what the research has shown. Now, things like how attractive she is, enters into it. Those are the tough type of things. But the other thing to throw in here too, though, is that around 80% of the men will, given the chance to have easy, quote unquote, casual sex, and priceless, not something they have to pay a price for, will take it. But the top 20%, and this is interesting, the top 20% in intelligence, just general intelligence, IQ, we would call it, general IQ of men are smart enough to want to have exclusive relationships. They don't want to have the hookup situation going on. So a woman who's saving herself in the way you're describing would be a very attractive partner for somebody, one of those males in the top 20% of IQ that's looking for somebody that has the same attitudes towards the importance of exclusivity as that he does. So yeah, that would be the answer I would give. When society is as it is, it makes it really, really tough on women, particularly as this society is. That's why I say it's so ironic, the effect that feminism has had on women. But the other thing I want to say is that society, we have a tendency to think that history is linear, that just, it started out over here, being really, really pure and, back in the old days. And it just, continuously gotten worse and worse and worse and more sexual anarchy as opposed to sexual integrity. But actually it's been, ups and downs. It's been cyclical. So in the last 350 years, we've had really 3 pendulum swings between sexual anarchy, which I would call, promiscuity for another word, and sexual integrity, which is the thing my life's become all about. So again, it's changed 3 times in 350 years. So about 100 plus, little bit over 100-year cycle.
Mm-hmm.
We're, I think, at the tail end of a very bad sexual anarchy phase cycle. So the heartening news is that I think we're on the backlash of this one, and I think a lot of women are kind of getting tired of it. And I think that they're realizing that if, as a union, so to speak, if more and more of them start not playing the hookup game, they're going to start raising their value up, and they're going to start getting more of what you described, earlier. You're very astute to pick up on that. One piece of evidence on that is that I don't know if you or your listeners, your watchers, have heard of the dating site OkCupid, but they started out about 2004, 2005.
Okay.
And they were smart enough they surveyed their customers every year as to their attitudes, towards like casual sex and all of that, hooking up. And from 2004 to 2016, it was always increasing the desire for casual sex and the openness to casual sex and that type of thing, hooking up. Mm-hmm. But starting about 2016, it started going down, the openness to casual sex and that type of thing, and especially with the females. The females have led the way, like a 10% a year, basically. So anyway, I think that, I think we have empirical proof that what we've gone through, is a terrible, it's probably the worst sexual anarchy period humans have ever been in. Mm-hmm. Probably next to, probably somewhere up there with Sodom and Gomorrah. Mm-hmm. But I think we're due and we're seeing a swing back in the other direction. I think that what you do, what you're doing, what I'm doing, what quite a growing number of other people are doing, mm-hmm. is calling attention to the situation and bringing the science to bear on it and getting the word out there. So I'll stop there.
I was going to say science and truth always complement each other. So what the church has been teaching for 2,000 years is backed up by science. And you see that in so many areas of life. So I'm so glad that you are able to bring the science to prove that point here.